Brief Interviews with Hideous Men by David Foster Wallace. First things first, this book is not for everybody. It deals with certain things people might find uncomfortable or just straight up triggering. And I'm going to go over exactly why, but those reasons that may make some people uncomfortable might be the reasons you actually like the book. So stay tuned. Also, at the end of this whole review, I'm gonna put up some discussion points for anybody that's actually read the books. I really want to hear your input on a few things, so stick around till the end so we can talk about it. The first part of this review, I'm gonna talk about just a brief summary of what the book is, how it's written. You probably already know, but the second part of the review, I'm gonna talk about why I don't think you should read it, or what I don't think was done particularly well, or things I didn't like about it. The third part will be the things that I liked about the book, the things that maybe you might want to read the book for, and the last part will be the conclusion and the discussion points like I said earlier. So, okay, what is this book? Well, it's basically broken up into two parts. The one part is the transcript-style interviews with the men. It's done in a question and answer format, except the question is just denoted with the letter Q, so it's kind of left for you to figure out what the question was through the context of the answer given. The interviews are with all males and from varying places. Some of them take place at college. There's a few that takes place in a few mental hospitals, things like that. Basically, they're all about the sexual nature of how men view women sexually, what the things they like to do with women, the manipulation they go through, the gaslighting they go through to get women to go home with them at the bar. Things like that. They're weird sexual fetishes. The other part of the story is the short stories. They cover both men and women. Most of them, if not explicitly about a sexual fantasy or fetish, it's at least about the impact of sexual behavior in everyday life. Why shouldn't you read it? There are a few things people find annoying, including me. That's David Foster Wallace's use of footnotes. He uses excessive footnotes, just like in all his work. It's not as bad as Infinite Jest or Consider the Lobster, but they are there. There's one part of the story where it's about a depressed person and a therapist's interaction with each other, and some of the footnotes are several pages long, so you see the asterisk of the story, then you read the footnote, and you have to flip through the footnote for several pages. Then when you're done with the footnote, you got to go back to the parallel story that was taking place, and sometimes you forget what was happening. You might find it annoying is David Foster Wallace's, he could not help himself but have a pretentious vocabulary in the works he did. He used big, uncommon words. He uses them a lot. He uses weird Latin phrases constantly for no real reason other than to show off. Important reasons you might not want to read this book is, well, the book it's pretty heavy on misogyny and objectification of women, like I said, the manipulation, raw sexism, treating women like things or like conquests, using women to fulfill sexual fantasies that are largely more about the men themselves or the weird things that happened to them in childhood that turned into these sexual fantasies. You get a good look at that. You get a good look at what are the root causes of these men's weird kinks and fetishes. The reason you might not want to read it, I'll just say this right now. If you're a victim of sexual violence at any point in your life, this book might not be the one for you, because there are two scenes where they kind of center around a rape, including the last scene in the book, which the book is really controversial. Interview number 21. I don't think you should read that if you're still recovering from an episode of sexual violence. It really is pretty rough to read. But it is beautiful at the same time. So, it's up to you if you decide you're ready for something like that. Also, it is a depressing read. Honestly, the subjects are nasty, gross, misogynist men. The outlook on human opinion is of selfish, self-pitying, self-justified animals. The crushing, depressing, existential depression of everyday life is pretty omnipresent in all of David Foster Wallace's work, so Brief Interviews is no different. Why should you read the book? Well, it paints... Why do I like it? Okay, the book paints such a complex painting of a person. The characters are fully three-dimensional. It's like you believe these people. Even though these people talk with big words and big fancy prose and rhetoric that no person actually talks like that, you believe they're real. You read these stories and it's like this. I feel like I'm reading a real case about someone. It's it's like I actually know these. After you finish these stories, it's like, wow, I feel like I know this person. I feel like I was involved in the story I read about. I feel like this happened to one of my when you read it, it's like you are a psychiatrist in your office, and these interviews or these short stories are the stories these people are telling you. It's like this is being told to you. It's like you're now involved in the story. That really is how powerful his writing is and his characterization is, and how much depth he gives his characters. In the story, he's able to showcase just how fucked up normal everyday life is. Like, we take, as human beings, our species takes a lot of weird behavior for granted. We just think it's normal, especially in the realms of sexuality. If you take even a cursory moment back and just look at things and what we do and the courtships and going out to bars and just fucking and all this sex stuff, it really is weird. And David Foster Wallace had a really good way of pulling out the normal everydayisms of what we go through and just exposing how weird and, I guess, unnatural wouldn't be the word, but just how strange they are. And just we take it all for granted and we look at it, it's like it's normal, but some of the stuff we do as humans is so fucking bizarre. And that's what a lot of his writing is about, is the complexity of everyday life and how strange it is. And it's fascinating. Really, like, most stories are about dramatic things, but David Foster Wallace, a lot of times he's just writing about normal everyday occurrences and how weird they are. And I don't know, like, if you try to write like David Foster Wallace, your writing comes out bland and boring, like, who cares? But he's able to, like, really pull out the complexity in these kind of things in a way that not a lot of other writers I've read can do. Humor is, I mean, the book is pretty funny. Like, there are parts, some of the parts you feel kind of bad about laughing about, but it is funny. The humor is dark. It's really depressing. It's really bleak. It's really desolate humor. It's kind of hopeless humor. It's cynical humor, but it is pretty funny. Like, it's worth the read if you're looking for a laugh. Some of the stories are a little more harmless than others. So, okay. For one of the other things I liked about the book, is kind of hard to talk about without a little bit of a spoiler. So if you're really sensitive to spoilers, it won't be too bad, but maybe just skip ahead a little bit. There's a part of the story called Octet, which is it's like a pop quiz format where he talks about two people. Their names are X and Y, and he's giving you these scenarios to ponder about between X and Y, and it's in a pop quiz format, and there's a few different revisions of it you have to read through. And at first I'm like, this is kind of a stupid gimmick. Like, why are we doing this? Why is David Foster Wallace, he's just being experimental for the sake of being experimental. Like, this is really annoying. I just wasn't really enjoying it. But near one of the last revisions of the pop quiz questions, he breaks down the fourth wall. David Foster Wallace starts talking to you as if you are the fiction writer of the pop quiz, and then he breaks down how all the things you did were just really annoying to the reader and why the reader wouldn't like it. And it's weird because all those things he lays out were the exact reason that I felt annoyed and, like, bothered, and I thought it was a cheap gimmick writing trick. And he goes into why he used it and how he failed or, like, he's talking to you, like you wrote it, and how you failed as a person. And it's I failed as a writer, not as a person. Failed as a writer, conveying the message you were trying to write through that format. And it's weird. And you read it and you're like, wow, those are all the things that I felt annoyed about the story. And it makes this instant connection between you and David Foster Wallace, this instant visceral connection that it's strange. It's weird. It's like he was just there with you. He called your feelings after you felt them. It's weird, and you don't get that in books a lot. It was, I don't know, just weird is the word I feel, but like a good weird. It was powerful writing. Also, and while interview number 21, the last interview in the book, like I said, brief interviews with Hideous Men is kind of controversial for. It is about a rape of a woman, and it is about the near murder of that woman, but it's some of the most profound short story writing I've ever read. I don't want to go too far into it, but when I finished it, I just sat at the end of my bed, and I just kind of stared at my wall for a little bit. It was about 3:30 in the morning when I finished it, and I swear I just sat there, and I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. It really is profound. I'm serious, guys. Like, if you're going to read any part of this book, maybe that's the one to read if you're not sensitive to those kind of subjects. Okay, before the conclusion, quick break. There's 3 music albums I think I'm going to choose for this reading that I think go really well with it. The first is Zaba by Glass Animals. It's got kind of this sticky, sleazy, gooey vibe to it that I feel kind of works with the sleaziness of the men in this story. The second is Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by Arctic Monkeys, that new album they put out. It's like you're sitting in a lounge at a cheap hotel and you're about to get hit on by some balding middle-aged man with a tie and a short sleeve dress shirt, you know? And the last album is The Ooze by King Cruel. First off, that's just kick-ass album. Second, it's got that sleazy, chaotic, loungy, jazzy feel to it. It just works really well with the book. So to conclude it, and these are my final thoughts, and some of these are going to contain a little bit of spoilers and discussion points, because I really do want your guys' opinions in the comments below. First off, if you're a woman and you've read this book, please tell me what you think of it. Tell me what you think of the men. Tell me what you think of the stories. Tell me what you think about some of the sexual abuse that happens. Let me know what your thoughts are, because I really want to follow a women's perspective on this. So comment below. I'll read them. I'll reply as much as I can. The second discussion point is like, how did you feel about Wallace breaking the fourth wall and using second person in the short story Octet? Did you get that same connection that I got? Because that was weird for me, so I want to know what you guys thought about that. This book paints a picture of human beings in a way that you don't really see a lot. At least I haven't seen a lot in the readings that I've read. I've read a lot of really great writers, but David Foster Wallace is able to paint such a picture of the normal, everyday human being in such an interesting way, in such an in-depth way, and he's really able to, like I said, strip down the normalities of everyday life and expose just how strange all this shit that we're accustomed to is. I think that's really the strength of David Foster Wallace's writing. So if you like that stuff, maybe read this book. So, thanks guys. Brief interview with Hideous Men.